What's up everyone and welcome to Dimension Datacraft. Today we're going to be talking about the best way to store your data. So what we're really talking about here is the concepts of how to store your data. And we're going to use spreadsheets as an example. So we're here in Google Sheets and we're going to look at a few examples that I frequently see that are not good ways to store your data and what is a good way to store your data. So you may not typically have to worry about this because maybe your data is coming out of a system, out of a database, something that's set up really structured. But I do see a lot of people who either take that data or when they have to collect and manage their own data, manage it in a spreadsheet, and it's not always organized in a way that's very good to use for charts or other applications like Google Data Studio. So what we're going to look at here is a few examples that are similar, that's common but not a great way to store it. So on this first page right here, what we're seeing is a list of categories, I'll call them, and a bunch of dates across the top. Now what we're looking at here is actually something called a crosstab table, or it's similar to what we would see as a pivot table. While it's not actually pivoting or doing anything like a pivot table, it's organized that way. And really all it's showing is values that coincide with this date and these categories, or this category and these dates. Now, while this might seem good and easy to read and easy to find information for people, it's showing us a very limited amount of information, and it also creates a problem of how big the data might get. So I like to call this a possibly infinite group, because if we look going across the top, while we might only be working right here from February 3rd to February 9th, it is possible that this could go on forever. And doing that would make our sheet insanely long and insanely big. It would be hard to read, hard to manage at that point, and it wouldn't really work well with making charts or visualizing things in applications like Data Studio, which is the ultimate goal of this type of data, or the ultimate goal is usually to output something for someone or make it presentable in a digestible way through charts or visualizations. So a similar example before we dig into the better way to do it, let's look at bad sample number 2. And it's the same thing but reverse. So this actually does a good job at illustrating the dates going vertically, which is a good thing. But we have the same possibly infinite group problem at the very top. So we might have categories that we're looking to track for dollars like gas, flight, taxi, hotel, movies, concerts, other touristy stuff. Now, while this might seem like a good idea because it allows us to be open-ended and add more, like for example, we could add something for food and start adding values, we run into the same problem of working all the way horizontally and possibly having tons more options that we can add that would make this sheet crazy. Now the real key behind these two bad samples is that there's no defined fields. We know that this is date in this column, and we know that everything inside this crosstab is numbers and their dollar amounts and their values, but there's nothing identifying what these actually are. So we could say that gas is the field type, but really gas is a category. Gas is an option. Flight and taxi, those are options of what we're looking at for dollar amounts. There could be a lot more information that we can associate with that date and that type of spending that we're looking at. So what's the good way to store this data? The good way to store this data is to think vertically and not horizontally. And I think a lot of times people see that and think it's bad because we see duplication. So we might see the date duplicated multiple times, or some other piece of information duplicated multiple times, because we're looking at it vertically and we're trying to capture a very specific level of detail. So let's look at the good sample. The good sample looks more like this. We have defined field names up top. So we're using date, category, type, amount, and notes. These are very generic. They could be anything you want, but we're trying to define exactly what that whole column is going to capture and utilize that to work vertically instead of horizontally. So if we look down from the top, we see that we have a lot of records for February 3rd. So what we're really doing here is saying, I want to look at one row being a transaction for a specific type of transaction. So to do that, there might be a lot of information associated with it. Not only date, but what category are we working in, what type, or what was the transaction maybe, the amount, and then maybe there's some extra stuff you want. Maybe you want to do a little free form. That's fine. But we're only going to be working in this A through E right now. We're never going to go out to AAA, ZZZ. And yes, this might go down for 500,000 rows, or anywhere in between. It allows us to then utilize those standardized fields to query or filter or pull out information more easily and drill down to what we're looking for. If we had all these categories and fields all the way to the right, it would be hard to do that because we wouldn't have a defined field type to look at. We would just have a bunch of different field types and different categories there. The other thing to note is, since this isn't a crosstab, this is a regular table and we're working vertically, there's no internal value amount. Each field can be its own thing and they can keep being their own thing. So the real key to thinking this way is thinking about it in at least 3 different areas. So let's look at the data structure. So the structure of the table is what we're talking about here, and what we really want to focus on is the field name, the field type, and I say notes, but this could really be any formatting or any other details about that. Now you can break that notes out into other categories, but really that name, type, and just what we're trying to accomplish there, the description of it, is most important. So if we do this for our good sample, we're seeing we're going to put our field names in there. So date, category, type, amount, and notes. So we take that and we say these are our field names. This is the type that we're working on, and then we're going to do some things with them. So for example, date is obviously going to be a date field. We can validate it and format it to a specific date type. The category and type, we know are going to be text fields, and maybe they're standard, so we can talk about putting a drop down there, but making sure that all those spellings are the right way and they're formatted the right way will keep consistency for when you try to aggregate it, roll it up, or filter out certain pieces of data. And then you can talk about the same with amount. Amount's going to be a number, so you know you can always do a calculation on it, and the notes is just open format, whatever else you want to type. But if you think about it in this structure, and you can write it out like this, then it's easy to build your table in a nice way. Now you might be thinking, but this bad sample works for me. This is an easy way for me to get to that information. And that's fine, because truly what this is a visualization. This is an output of your data that you want to make. You can make this if you store your data like this. It's unrealistic to store your data for a long period of time in this way. It's realistic to store it this way and use this to make that visualization, to make that crosstab table, to make that pivot table, or to make anything else you want to out of it. So the takeaway from this is work vertically, work with specifically defined fields, and create a nice table structure for storing your data for the long term. So I hope this was helpful. If you want to see more about how data structures like this help you leverage applications like Data Studio, check out the videos that we have about Data Studio and getting started in that. If you want to see more about how to structure and organize your data in sheets and how to leverage formulas and functions in there to do that better, keep checking back for more videos. Leave a comment, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and have a good day.